company's profitability depends on the industry. That's the studies that show that industry has pretty big influence on how successful the organization will be. If you look at this chart, these are the average economic profits of different industries. If you look at the automakers versus, for example, pharmaceuticals, major pharmaceuticals, you'll see how, these are economic profits. So this is return on equity, which is a kind of a close resemblance to economic profit.
All right, the picture has changed dramatically by now, right?
What do you mean?
There was no IT,
Yeah.
It's 2006.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, there is IT. It's just it's not here, but it's not because they don't mention it. These are exactly.
This is not the full list.
These are just some of the examples of the industries. It's obviously not fully comprehensive. These are some of the known something that you can relate to, right? So as you can see, and these are on average. Right? So it doesn't say, for example, it doesn't mean that all of the major banks, for example, have a positive ROE of 10%. That means that an industry on average has 10%. As we know, within that industry, there are some banks which are highly profitable, but there are some banks which are not doing so well. Right? Why is that? That's a different issue. That's why there is no single answer. There is no blue pill that solves all of your that helps you to fully comprehend and understand and make strategic decisions. That's why you need different strategic frameworks. That's why 5 forces is one of them. It helps you to analyze the industry, but it doesn't answer all of the questions, right? Same stuff with automotive. It says that automotive on average is about 5% negative ROE. Which doesn't mean that Toyota is on the same level as General Motors. So somehow Toyota does something different, right? Which is not fully explained by the industry. Or in media, or in airlines, for that matter. Airlines on average are hugely unprofitable business. Hugely. Not only in economic terms, in real terms. In accounting terms. In accounting terms, a lot of airlines are loss-making. But there is Southwest, for example, in the United States, which is very, very well managed and highly profitable airline.
Ukrainian International Airlines.
Yeah, that's another way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So before Porter, this was the idea of an industry analysis. There was no thinking in terms of what influences the industry. It was about, so there is a product, and the pricing of a product is at the intersection of supply and demand, and so, if there is more supply, the curve moves out, and then the price falls. If there is more demand, the curve moves out, and the prices rise, etc. But there was no real studying of, so what influences the industry in general? What makes the industry, successful or not? And Mr. Porter changed that a little bit, or his studies. He put it again. It's not that he invented it. He rather put it all together, right? So again, it's not rocket science, and I'm sure you saw it. But there are 4 elements. Can you see it well, or is the text a bit blurry?
It's okay.
Can you see what's written down there?
Price, cost.
That's a bit blurry, but again, it can be.
It's better from distance.
Of course, all big things are seen better.
Williams price, cost, profitability to pay. Talking about these words.
Yeah, willingness to pay, price, cost, profitability.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I have no idea how to manage this thing, but so which one do you think is the biggest, is the most important one to take into consideration?
Buyers?
Okay, other ideas? I mean, okay.
Buyers?
No.
Potential entrant?
What is the most important
Yeah, which
force
one?
in the
Yeah.
order?
Depending on
It
the
depends on.
competitors probably the most, but competitors which are including also not like direct competitors but like substitution, yes.
Yeah, but also not even on the industry, but on the product. We're
Yeah, but
thinking-
just like for Uber is not only like Uklon is direct competitor, but like Metro or like now walking distance.
Because we did this analysis in our marketing course, and as far as each group presented it, and as far as I remember, like for each group, it was a different thing which was important. And we had different products.
Why do you think? Oh, sorry. Why do you think this? Maybe I'll give you a hint. Why do you think this approach to rents is called monopoly rents?
There is no competitors. There are no competitors in the case of the monopoly. Or you bid
So-
or
I firmly believe, and it's not like my personal belief, single most important force that first and foremost, any organization should deal is creating barriers to entry. So, or rather, can the industry allow for creation of barriers to entry? Because depending on that hugely influences
on the strategy.
this. The threat of potential entrants has direct impact on how many industry competitors in fact you have. Because if it's difficult to enter the industry, you'll have few competitors. If it's easy to enter the industry, you have lots of competitors. Right? Because obviously, then kind of it's the same thing. So the impact of industry competition and the impact of low barriers to entry, if you notice, is exactly the same. It's exactly the same. It drives it's good for the consumer, it's bad for the industry in terms of its profitability. So potential entrance, or rather threat of potential entrance, is the most important factor to consider in any industry.
And substitutes? Is it
Uh,
the same thing?
Again, yes. My point is they're all important, otherwise they wouldn't be here, right? So otherwise they wouldn't be here. So the point is definitely, it's all important, and obviously, the threat of substitutes and everything, that's important. But your decision of whether to be in the industry or not, first and foremost, lays in, how difficult is it to enter that industry? So if I somehow, so the biggest question from the industry point of view for any organization is, can we somehow create barriers to entry into this industry? If we enter, if the barrier is high and we enter it, then it means that once we're in, the other bastards, it's going to be pretty difficult for them to do the same thing, right? So, if you think about it in terms of linking industries to profitability, with, pharmaceuticals, major pharmaceuticals, do they have high or low barriers to entry?
High.
Extremely high.
This is like fantastic industry to be. So if you're in that industry, because threat of new entrance is low, supplier's power is low, buyer's power is low, substitutes almost non-existent, complements, which is good. This is the sixth force that Ford added later on. Kind of mixed feelings. There are no real kind of complements to the pharmaceuticals. But otherwise, this is exactly why it's so hugely profitable. To develop a new drug, patented drug, is north of $1 billion.
Airlines entrance is also extremely expensive.
This is a big mistake that people make.
What about educational industry?
Interesting question. Just 1 second about airlines. Do you know the story of Virgin Airlines?
No.
Do you know how Richard Branson created it? He was stuck on the islands in the Caribbean. I remember, like the plane broke down or something like that, and there were several other people stuck in the airport. So he just went to them, said, "Look, there is like 20 or 30 of us. Let's just hire a plane and get out of here." They each put a certain amount of money. They hired a plane, which is like, that's what you call a charter. So how difficult is it to start an airline? Do you know charter airlines? Like those that fly to Turkey, to Egypt, whatever. You don't
Yes,
even know their
direct.
names.
I recently they started like New Ukrainian Airlines, SkyUp or something, and they already have like 5 or more planes. So I'm wondering like how.
It's not difficult. It's not difficult because there are a few. It's a totally valid question. There are a few things that people few misconceptions. First, most airlines don't own planes; you lease them. So there is no need for a capital outlay. Second, buying routes. The most difficult part in airlines is securing specific routes, but it's not difficult to actually have some routes. So securing time slots is difficult. So securing time slot with Heathrow is difficult. But securing time slot with Stansted, for example, it's not that difficult. Or Luton, exactly. So no, airline is not a difficult business to get into in terms of the capital expense. And barriers to entry can be different. So in pharma, why is it so expensive? Because the R&D is so expensive. Because the testing and then patenting and then approving those drugs in each of those countries is extremely lengthy and expensive process. So, but again, guys, it's important. We're talking about major pharma. The generics are definitely less attractive, but also attractive. But in general, major pharma, yes, extremely attractive. This one as well. So here, this is what you have: household and personal care. This is the P&G, Unilever, the rest. What's the biggest barrier to entry here?
R&D.
Production, manufacturing.
I guess.
Marketing and distribution. It's not about R&D, it's not about production, it's about marketing and distribution in reality. What you discussed, securing the shelf space in Auchan and creating the brand. That's it. You have tons of producers who produce equally or better, hairsprays, toothpastes, shampoos, shower gels, etc. But people buy Pantene, people buy Old Spice, people buy that stuff because the companies own the supply chain up to the consumer point, and the companies own the brands. The companies have marketing budgets which are unrivaled.
It's especially funny when the CEO of this kind of companies, they say we are very innovative. I mean,
Of course.
creams.
How innovative
I'm
can
from
you be?
pharmaceutical background. I know this, pharmaceutical manufacturing process. All the creams, all the shampoos are the same. I mean,
Of course.
there is nothing new, nothing innovative. I mean,
Of course.
there are no, unique formulas that can, grow your hair or something like that.
Yeah.
It's very simple, believe me. So, and they say we are very innovative. Come on, you just, in reality,
Right.
save the shelf and
They
that's
mean
all.
the bottles are very
So what is inside is the same.
But the packaging is innovative.
I mean, if you truly innovative, go to US and try to approve through the FDA.
Yeah, exactly.
It takes 10 years to.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, guys, the point is, we're not talking about companies specifically, but the point is, indeed, if you look at each of the industries and you kind of break it down into this 5 forces or 6 forces in complements, it's an interesting, important element. It can give you a pretty good, initial idea, at least, why this or that industry is like that. So if you understand the key forces, the key drivers that influence each of those industries, then you can have a much better chance of, understanding, okay, so if I want to, does it mean that I shouldn't, for example, compete and launch a new brand? No. It just means that I'm not going to compete with P&G on the same dimensions. Right? Going back to this. If I go for this, I'm doomed. There is no way I can outcompete P&G in operational effectiveness. It's just no way, They will be 5, 10 steps ahead. However, I'm still, I'm L'Occitane, I'm doing pretty good. L'Occitane is a great brand, they're doing really good. Opening stores, etc. Why? How? Now they're doing something different within the industry, right? So the understanding, it's not, my point is, it's not fully you don't have to say 5 forces is the only kind of framework that influences the profitability. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's just my point is that there are some elements to analyzing, the business. And first, it's a good place to start. You start with analyzing the industry. Start understanding the industry and understanding whether you can make money and how you can make money in it. In automotive, for example, it's a tricky industry because on the one hand, it's pretty, it's difficult to get into because obviously the capital costs are pretty high. So here, the threat of potential entrance is low. It's difficult to start a new Toyota. But what's here is the industry competition, which already exists in the industry, is extreme. It's bloody, because all of them are large, they have large scale, so they compete to the max. And why is that? Because these guys have the power. The consumers have the power. That's why it's the companies who manage, the companies that manage in one industry or the other, the companies that manage to somehow convince or to change the business model to tie the customer are better than the other, right? So loyalty to the brand. That's why Mercedes is doing better off than, say, Opel. Brand loyalty of Mercedes customers is extremely high compared to Opel customers. Is it partly because of the quality? Of course. That's why Mercedes invests so much money into the innovation and to being...
Perceived quality.
Sorry?
Or maybe better perceived quality.
I wouldn't say it. I would say straightforward quality. I mean, like on average, I would argue on any day that on average, same year Mercedes-Benz is better in any case than Opel in terms of the number of innovations that exist in the car, in terms of the way the car behaves, etc. Probably it is. Probably it is. I'm pretty sure. Lexus less so, but still, I mean, the point is they invest a lot of money. They do differentiate themselves, right? So if some of the companies within the industry are managing somehow to win this loyalty, they manage somehow to reduce this level of bargaining power. Think about it the other way. So some of the customer groups are extremely non-sensitive, right? So if you are, you can be Mercedes-Benz, or you're a Rolls-Royce. Who do you compete with?
Private jets. They're Rolls-Royce.
Exactly. Partly, yes. But basically, you compete with Bentley, Mercedes, but then you compete with consumer tastes and preferences, right? So, if you think about it only in terms of, okay, who's my current competition, then you may be doing okay for some time, but if you think about it in terms of who is my current competition and where do the customer preferences move, then exactly, you think Tesla. You think, okay, like, are the customer preferences shifting to, more downshifting? Not driving a house on the wheels versus, like eco-friendliness, less costly, etc., etc., etc.
Gadgets on the wheels.
Right? Yeah, gadgets on the wheels. So if you understand that, if you understand that part of the industry, if you understand that, okay, the threat will come from the buyers, and how do I win over the buyers, and what are the consumer trends in buyers' minds, then you can be doing good. Otherwise, again, you're fucked. But in order to do that, you need to kind of understand the industry, understand all of the forces that influence it, understand which of the forces in your particular industry kind of has the biggest impact, and work with it. Any questions or comments so far? Now, the complementary view to the industry, again, it's not a contradicting, it's a complementary view, is the resource-based view. And here we're talking about business model. Here we're talking about being consistent. So creating a business model that has all of its parts, all of its elements coherent and moving and closely interrelated and kind of working together. So if we again go back to this is about putting those two together. This is about understanding the industry, and then it's about creating a model that can position you in the industry successfully. So again, there is no kind of single recipe. And here we're going back to this whole notion of integrated set of choices. That, again, this is something you've already seen in your marketing classes, I'm sure, in terms of kind of two core approaches to positioning yourself, either differentiated or low cost, and then kind of two target markets, broad or narrow. So nothing too new. The problem is how to create the internal and external consistency that supports each of these choices. How to create the company structure internally and the resources that are needed, and how to act externally that support either this or this. And yeah, another nice little simulation. So, in terms of SOC stands for Supply Opportunity Cost. Effectively, like for the sake of simplicity, let's call it a cost for now. It's a little bit different than the cost, but like for the sake of simplicity, let's call it cost. So basically, there are only two things that you can do in terms of making money. You can either go for increasing the willingness to pay, and that means only one thing: you have to differentiate. And obviously, some of the successful examples of that would be Apple. Because they are not about kind of industry, they're definitely not too much below the industry's costs, right? So they're not focusing themselves too much on cost. Their focus first and foremost is on willingness to pay. But the other alternative, I mean, if you are here, is this. So being low-cost competitors, so somehow being able to be significantly below the industry's average costs.
Some tool from Harvard Business School of this.
Yeah. This is the ideal situation. Some companies manage that as well. This is a rare case, but if you can manage both, this is fantastic. Some
Like
FMCG.
mobile operation.
Why would, okay, so in mobile operator, I cannot see how you can decrease your costs significantly below the industry average.
By using artificial intelligence, cut off HR costs.
Yeah, but do you know the successful examples of differentiated, innovative mobile operators? I don't.
We will see soon.
Okay.
Skype operator, etc.
Could be. I think Skype operator is a death spiral. I think Skype is dead. But could be. I think, the
Facebook operator.
but I mean, all of those costs are fully for mobile operators. The cost is not, they cannot do anything about cost. They're all the same. So the problem for mobile operators is exactly this because of the source of revenue. Right now, at this point, they're struggling because right now they are a commodity. Mobile operators are a commodity.
Utility.
Yeah, like utility companies. Because you use them, just to go to the internet. I don't, I think I may have sent like one SMS per last couple of months, maybe. It's mostly WhatsApp, Viber, Telegram, right? So where does mobile operator come into this, right? They just, they can provide me, they give me the pipe, nothing else. So it's a struggle for them. It's really a struggle for them. Some of the successful ones could be FMCG, some FMCG companies, some of their businesses, not all of them, but some of them, which have great brand on the one hand, and they can have a cost advantage on the other hand. Some of them are managing to do that. In their early years, this was not early, but I would say 1980s. This was Toyota or Honda.
Japanese.
Yeah, because on the one hand, in the States, they like in the 80s, they established good brand. So in 70s and early 80s, Japanese car in the States was like a Chinese car in Ukraine right now. So it was perceived as kind of, something, Americans were buying American.
Inferior.
And what, sorry?
Like inferior.
Yeah, inferior product, exactly. But then Japanese managed to convince that, we have better quality, these cars are better quality, these cars are better made, and at the same time, by following the Kaizen, which was then transformed into Six Sigma and lean manufacturing principle, they managed to outperform Americans on cost, big time. So they were significantly better on costs, and they created a higher willingness to pay on the customer side. So they double-edged their advantage, and that's why they're doing great on the American market and not only. But again, as I said, it's not a common, it's a pretty rare case, and it's a holy grail. But in any case, the point of being profitable and the whole point of strategic decisions is how do you somehow create this difference. So this is where the strategy comes in. So what do you do about it? How do you increase it and how do you move it either way? And in terms of doing that, again, as we discussed, there is a coherent set of activities. So they need to fit with each other, and there have to be trade-offs. Those are two prerequisites. If you're not making trade-offs, and those activities don't fit very well, it's a recipe for disaster. It's, you're doomed. They have to be consistent with each other. They have to mutually reinforce each other, so every activity, of the company has to somehow reinforce all the other activities. And they can be and should be optimizing the existent ones. But again, I cannot stress it. I cannot stress it more. Equally important is that they have to be trade-offs. So for mutual reinforcement, or for consistency, let's start there in terms of fit. BMW. What's the slogan for BMW?
Today, tomorrow, Toyota.
They put it ultimate driving machine. So they're selling, their value proposition to the customers is it's the car for the driver. What does BMW do in order to support this positioning on the market in terms of their activities? Do you think they hire cheap or expensive engineers?
I don't know, but I spoke
Probably
to a
expensive.
person working at a dealership in Kiev, and what she told me wasn't really didn't form a good opinion about BMW service in Ukraine.
No. Okay, service in Ukraine. Let's talk about product.
Stereotypically, it should be like high-end specialist.
Right. Because
It looks at.
Because if that's your positioning is very specific. It's a luxury car aimed at people who like driving, right? Who like to feel themselves behind the wheel. That's a very specific positioning.
Driving fast or just driving?
No, just driving, enjoying driving. So enjoying the process of controlling the car, enjoying how the car goes, how you can control the car.
Like full control, like German.
So very specific position. Because if they just said we're a luxury car, it's not enough. Mercedes is also a luxury car.
But it's a rare drive vehicle, right?
It's a what? No,
Rare.
not only. No. It's also you also have the four-wheel drives as well. But the point is, the positioning is premium vehicle for the driver. So the activities that exist within the organization need to support that, right? Can you hire cheap engineers to save on costs? Yes. Will it support your message? Will you support the product? Probably not.
So they shouldn't have production in China, for instance.
They shouldn't what, sorry?
Shouldn't have production in China.
Why not? Apple has production in China.
If China perceived like something like lower.
No, wait. I'm not talking about perception. Now I'm talking about they are specifically positioning themselves. Right? So positioning meaning, if Chinese engineers are the best, hell, I will be hiring Chinese engineers because they're the best. This is the difference. It's not about perception. It's about actually supporting that positioning with the activities. Right? So if you break it down, into different categories, and we'll look at it in probably next session. There is this thing called value chain. You may have probably seen it, right? So if you look at it from a value chain perspective, internally and externally, right? So internally, there are a few things, but if you look at it from a very simple perspective, so like, for example, hiring process. Can it be a simple or a difficult hiring process at IBM? At BMW. So probably difficult for especially for engineering, because if at the core of their messaging is ultimate driving machine, first and foremost, that car has to drive really well. That's the key element that their customer expects from their car, right?
Okay, is it your BMW downstairs?
Sorry?
Is it your white BMW?
Yeah, but it has nothing to do with my example. It's just an example. We can take a Mercedes. Mercedes has equally or even great. No, seriously. Mercedes has equally or even great sort of message, right? Their message is, like the ultimate luxury car, but they're not aiming. They're not saying, okay, we are the best car to drive. Okay, their positioning is a bit different. However, still, the fundamentals are, the set of activities is the same. So Mercedes is not sold in the same quality of showrooms as, for example, Great Wall.
Yeah.
Right?
But even in Europe, I asked a lot of people, the perception of European cars is really deteriorating.
Could be. Yeah, of course.
They think that the Japanese cars and South Korean cars are better, and Mercedes and BMW are not the same as they used to be, and blah blah blah.
That's the problem of Mercedes and BMW. Then they must be doing something wrong.
Yeah. So it's like a lot of money and not the quality that you expect for the.
True. Then they must be doing something wrong. Then they must be doing something wrong. What I'm saying is it's not that what Mercedes does, but what Mercedes should be doing, right? In terms of positioning, in terms of consistency of your activities, right? So if you are positioning yourself as a luxury car, your activities within the organization has to support. So you have to procure high quality materials, right? You cannot put the same quality of materials as they put in a Chinese car. You have to have better engineers. You have to have other parts that are supporting exactly this positioning on the market. And they have to reinforce each other, right? So high quality engineers means that, if it's a high quality or rather say complicated recruitment process, that means that it attracts better talent because people like challenges. Engineers like challenges. Right? So if an organization creates challenging environment, technical people like it because they like to solve complex problems. They don't like, to deal with easy issues. So again, mutually reinforcing. If the buzz among engineers says, that BMW is by far the most challenging place to work at, and they give you the most interesting, and challenging work, then what you will have the best knocking on your door, right? And in order to do that, you have to create that whole process. So you have to be true to the fact that you are challenging them with big, complex tasks, and you have to create the process that really filters out the best. So, in Cirque du Soleil, mutually reinforcing choices. How many of you have been to Cirque du Soleil?
We
No?
heard about that.
Okay, we'll talk about it. Yeah, it's a good example of a blue ocean strategy, obviously. So Cirque du Soleil, for example, it's kind of like it's a circus in a way. In a way, it's not. Cirque du Soleil, who do they target? Who's
Adults.
Wide audience?
Exactly, adults. By definition, by normal definition, if we think about circus, who do we think about? Kids, right? Cirque du Soleil said, fuck kids, you can bring your kids, but we don't care. It's for adults. It's a choice. It's a conscious choice. So they're not striving to be everything for everyone. They're not saying your kids are going to love it. They're not saying your 2-year-old will enjoy it. Your 2-year-old will probably hate it. Because it has it's between circus and theater. And kids hate theater because it's boring and people talk. And there are no animals. So, but they're mutually reinforcing because what happens then, adults know that yes, it's not a good idea to take my 2-year-old to Cirque du Soleil, but adults know that it's a great idea for me and my wife to go to Cirque du Soleil because I know they will be producing stuff for me, not for kids. I'm going to enjoy it, not my kids. Right? So they're conscious about it. They're consciously making those trade-offs. The shows that they produce, the content that they produce is aimed at adults. The music, the performance, everything, it's aimed at adults. It's a trade-off. They're trading off the kids. Kids are a huge audience, right? People spend tons of money on kids. But Cirque du Soleil said, okay, we're not going to be there. You can bring the kids, but our key audience are adults. And so we want to serve them. Cirque du Soleil serves wine in the cafeteria. Not your typical kind of kid-friendly place, right? So all of those elements, each of those types of activities, internal and external, needs to be consistent, need to be kind of fit together, reinforced, because again, at Cirque du Soleil, if adults know that this is a place for adults, they will kind of be there. Those choices reinforce each other. But they do require trade-offs. They do require choices. So, in terms of external positioning, we spoke about mutually reinforcing and internal positioning. In terms of external positioning on the industry landscape, one way to put it could be to use the kind of the three-dimensional landscape between business model, market segment, and the profitability. And let's take, I don't know, we can take whichever company you'd like, and let's try to kind of to look at it how its business model can evolve. So we have a starting point, which is an initial business model. If we go along the market segment dimension, for example, we want to increase the profitability. Let's pick a company. Let's try to play with it.
Netflix.
Okay, Netflix. Fine. So, what would you do to get here?
Get more increase amount of the subscribers.
Okay. So how would you do that?
To go to the new market segment with the same business model.
Okay. Specifically.
No geographical location.
New content, whatever.
Okay. Yeah, geography. Yeah, geography could be good. Yeah, geography could be a good thing. Yeah. Or go after you know specific market segment, right? So I don't know. For example, make a specific sub-channel for gay people, right, or for minorities, something like that, for example.
Educational.
Right. So.
Who needs education? We need
I don't
money.
know.
You got it.
So in that dimension, basically nothing happens to the business model, right? Netflix is in the same business model dimension. They're doing the same stuff, but they're just expanding and exploring new market segments. What if we wanted to be here?
Then we need to change the business model within the same segment.
Right. and
Like
it's-
starting a Netflix.
It's written there. Tell me specifics about Netflix.
Netflix airline, for example.
Interesting.
The subscription model.
Okay, Netflix Airlines.
With
yeah.
Netflix
Movies played in there. Cool.
Compete with Pornhub.
Yeah.
Probably.
No,
So
just-
yeah.
Just like producing the new content.
Producing new content. Okay, let's. This is interesting. So, initial business model of Netflix, in fact, it's true, was distribution of content. So you're correct. You know, in terms of jumping into producing content, yes, that's a different business model and different positioning. Because that way, for example, they can actually produce content not only for Netflix, right? They can produce content for movie theaters just as equally. If they have the production base which is large enough, this is what Amazon is doing. Amazon are not producing content for Amazon alone. Amazon are producing content for for movie studios.
They can make some, not only like different type of content, not only movies, but maybe some music or, I don't know, games or apps.
Yeah.
With subscription, yeah. Or
But
text.
I would say, yeah, it's a different positioning, right? But not. The business model is more about the airlines or something like that, right? Because this is different positioning, but still the model is more or less the same. It's still subscription-based content, right? Because the difference between positioning and model, the model requires totally different set of activities. So the model answers a very simple question: how do we make money? In a nutshell, how do we make money?
Okay, I would make a co-founding of не co-founding, like kick-starting for setting the new movies. For example, new season of Game of
Crowdsourcing,
Thrones. Yes.
Something.
Not co-founding.
Crowdfunding.
Crowdfunding, yes.
Okay.
Crowdfunding for launching a new episodes of the.
So how do you make money? What's the business?
What's the business? I'm not spending money on new episodes.
Ah, okay. You mean okay? I got it. Okay.
Actually, my audience is not paying me a subscription. My audience is financing my content.
Until you want
And
to-
actually, their donation, they're voting which
Well, but can't-
episodes or
Okay.
which movies I need to
Well,
produce.
currently they voting with their wallets, yes, and you
But
budget
only
some-
post factum.
Yeah.
They will
I
No,
will
that's a
change
different-
the model.
no, this is a
I don't.
different
I'm
business
not
model. It's
interested. I'm not interested about their feedback when I have already spent a lot
Yeah.
of tons of money. I would like to get their opinions and their money before.
You know what the problem is with that? No, I mean, you're absolutely right. This is exactly the point. This is a different business model.
Yes.
Perfect example, right? Because the way they make money right now, they produce the content, so they invest money and then they sell it. And so they get the money on the subscription. So their point is to try to make the content which is as plausible as possible, and therefore to get as many subscribers as possible and get that money, right?
Well, they have like model something like with this. They make the first season. If it succeeds, like House of the Cards, yes, they make the next season.
Yeah, but they still
will
invest.
not-
Yeah, I mean, the source of revenue comes from subscription,
Yeah.
right? I think what Helena is saying is absolutely fair. It's a different model how they make money. So what they can do is crowdsource it and distribute it for free, effectively. Right? So I mean, it's not a good or bad. I'm not saying it's a great idea. I'm just saying this is a good example of approaching this and doing this as a different business model. The only problem with it is probably never going to fly because it's a creative industry. Never going to fly meaning probably it's never going to work out. In creative,
I like very much HBO. As a company, I like their content, so probably I would spend some money. Just they have already launched and stopped several movies, and I would like to see what was the idea, what might be in the next season.
because
Black Mirror,
with the
Castle Rock.
No, but I mean the problem is with the crowd created content, it's very difficult to to please everyone. Because again, if you're creating, this is the general issue with creative industries. Because if you're trying to please everyone, you're pleasing no one.
Okay, but
I'm not saying again, the
but
idea
I
is
believe,
good.
but I believe that they are making their economic loss because they are losing such opportunity, and I believe a lot of people among the world they have like a desire to see new season of their favorite movie.
Yeah, I mean, the point is, I get you. I mean, it's just that creating crowdsourced content is usually pretty difficult to realize in practice.
Nobody hasn't tried yet.
Well, right. Yeah, or this in book writing there was some models.
But again, I mean, this is a good example.
We just started. The task was to give the ideas of business model, but not to validate them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No need to validate. It's just to show you that you can. The companies can operate in different in some point.